Well, welcome to everybody. I hope you can also hear me. And I'm very pleased to be with you. I came to the Eye on Earth Summit in October and was very impressed by what was being done, the overlap with what we are trying to do. And I hope we can really bring these activities together. Many of the sponsors of Eye on Earth are also involved, like GEO particularly, but others as well are involved with the Belmont Forum closely. So we don't want to reinvent things, but we want to be able to really make sure that we have open data, open models, open ways of working across these important areas of science, because it's important for all of us for social reasons and also for scientific reasons. So about the Belmont Forum is 21, soon to be 22, of the world's largest funders of environmental science, including many names that you will know, like the National Science Foundation in the US, the Natural Environment Research Council in the UK, the European Commission, the Japanese Science and Technology Agency, CSIRO in Australia, for PESPI in Brazil. In fact, we have funders in every continent, including funding work in Antarctica, but we have actual national or international agencies, and also we have affiliated ICSU, the International Council of Scientific Unions, GEO, UNEP, and other bodies for this. There are a set of grand challenges which the Belmont Forum is set up to deal with. Derek's already talked about this quite a bit. These slides, by the way, are busier than I would normally use in a talk, but it's so you can refer to the things afterwards, in the slides afterwards. So about 3 years ago, the Belmont Forum decided that the principals, this is like the head of NSF and NERC and so on, they decided that they really needed to get a handle on making all their data open. A lot of the journals, such as Nature, are moving to a state where all their data has to be open. It's important for reproducibility and confidence in the science that all the data involved are as open as is possible to be. And so they asked a group of people to look at this problem. So the Belmont Challenge, which when it was originally set up in 2009, is to deliver the knowledge needed for action to avoid and adapt to detrimental environmental challenges, including extreme hazardous events. And so there have been a set of programs so far that are bringing together scientists and social scientists around the world, looking at assessment of risks, impact and vulnerabilities, information on the state of the environment, interaction of natural and social sciences, and enhanced environmental information service providers to users. And you can see that particularly the last one is clearly about data and information, but it runs through everything that they wish to do. This, and you need to have effective international coordination mechanisms. So this e-infrastructures and data management CRA stands for Cooperative Research Action, was set up in the annual meeting in New Delhi in 2013, and I was asked to co-chair this, and together with Lee Allison who's very involved in EarthCube in the United States. And so this is what they say: the need to address global environmental challenges requires a more coordinated approach to the planning, implementation and management of data, analytics and e-infrastructures through international collaboration. And the question then arises as to how we do it. We've got lots of big data problems in environmental science with volume. My own school, we have about 1 petabyte of data a day that we're analyzing. with the variety of data in many formats. Of course, you can get big data is not just large volume, not just large files, it's big variety of data, of small data sets as well. You have the veracity and data quality of the data. Many of the so-called climate skeptics are concerned about what's the quality of the data and the model output, and many of the biggest challenges are to do with how fast the data is needed for making effective decisions, particularly for risks. So this is an oldish paper now, but you can see here the growth in big data in the climate community. Down at the very bottom is the data we tend to think of, which is the in situ data. We're getting a lot of increase in satellite data and an even bigger increase in model output data. So we have to not just look at raw data, we have to look at all of these. And this is, of course, is increasing probably at a faster rate than that was predicted in this paper in Science in 2011. One of the problems when we're looking at these cross-disciplinary problems is that data are all in silos. They're in different Earth observation or other archives. You can't get between them. It becomes almost impossibly difficult without using more modern technology to be able to bring all the data together. Of course, new technologies then help with this, with cloud computing, but we have to be able to manage it for the benefit of the science and not just the benefit of the technology. So, the vision that we gave ourselves involves high quality, reliable, multidisciplinary global change research enabled by a sustained human and technical, internationally coordinated and data-intensive e-infrastructure. And so I would see this supporting very much what you are trying to do with Eye on Earth as well, because you need this infrastructure to be able to do this, and the infrastructure has to be able to process this continuously increasing diversity and volume of data generated that comes from and needs to be delivered to anywhere in the world, which is it. And the data have to be easily discoverable, they have to be reusable, they have to be open and accessible by default as far as is possible. I realize, particularly in social sciences, there are a lot of issues of privacy about openness, but as far as we can, we want to make the data open for that. And you need transparent metadata to be able to understand, particularly related to trustworthiness and quality of the data. So we spent 2 years producing a report, and everything, by the way, everything we have done is online. I'll give you, at the end, I'll give you the address where you can see everything we've done. And we produced a set of recommendations. We have a final report which is just addressed the principles, and then we made a slightly easier to read version. It's easier to read because it has a bit more background about what the Belmont Forum is and so on, which is for the wider community. They're essentially the same, but there's a bit more background. And so if you want to understand the detail of our reasoning, I'll go through that now, what we want to do. It's a unified vision that expresses the global infrastructure needs, barriers, and gaps. It identifies the few strategic research priorities of what can be done better in a multilateral way to support global change research. There are many things that have to be done by each of the agencies independently of each other that can be coordinated but don't have to be done in a multilateral way. So each country, many of the agencies already have data repositories. So it's a matter of making them open rather than necessarily reinventing those. Some countries, like Brazil, don't have national repositories and do need to have and do need to put investment in that. So there are things which are different because each agency and each country is different, and these are the things which have to be done together. And so what we're trying to do is to integrate the existing international research and best practice that we've learned to inform the different stakeholders who are both the scientists and the science funding agencies, and then prioritizing action to promote a holistic environmental support system. We had a steering committee of 14 people. You will see me second from the left. But then we have people from ICSU and GEO, as well as from many of the agencies and countries concerned with this. But all of the countries that have been involved in some way in this, there's one member per country. And also some members from international organizations, and we organized by a set of subgroups, although the final recommendations came together from and go across the subgroups, because we worked together across the whole program quite strongly. And we had a secretariat as well. Lee and I chaired the international committee, but we also had a secretariat of support staff to be able to bring all this together and hold meetings and so on. And then we had an assembly of 10 experts per country to be able to, approximately, but there were more in some, who were able to contribute as much as they would wish, and we encourage other people to contribute, including not just domain scientists, but computer scientists, legal experts, and social scientists. There are 5 final report recommendations. Firstly, adopting data principles that establish a global interoperable infrastructure with cost-effective solutions, and I'll come back to that as to what our principles are. Foster communication, collaboration, coordination, and I'll go through all of these, by the way, in more detail, through a data and infrastructure coordination office that promote an effective data planning and stewardship, determine international community best practice, and support development of cross-disciplinary training curriculum. I realize some of these are in common with other people like the RDA, and of course we'll work through all these other bodies if we can. But remember, these are actually the funders deciding to work together, so they can provide resources for people and things like RDA, which otherwise are voluntary. And then the actual data policy and principles have been adopted by all the Belmont Forum members now, and they're across their programs. And of course it's going to take them time to do some of these, but so it's widen access to data and promote long-term preservation of data in global change research. They will help improve data management and exploitation. They'll coordinate and integrate disparate organizational and technical elements, fill critical global change infrastructure gaps, share best practices, and foster new data literacy. And then this is more background about this, about recommending a broad-based training and education curriculum as part of research programs, and then providing examples of those, working with companies as well on, and with publishers and so on open access to data, and to provide the skills to all the scientists and others so that they can take advantage of it, and making sure that we have a cost-effective in global interoperable e-infrastructure. So the principles say that data has to be discoverable through catalogs and search engines, accessible as open data by default, made available with minimum time delay, understandable in a way that allows researchers, including those outside the discipline of origin, to use them, and manageable and protected from loss for future use in sustainable, trustworthy repositories. And so that they will, all the investigators that these agencies fund, say the National Science Foundation, Natural Environment Research Council and others, JST, CSRO, will have to make their data available in repositories to be discovered to meet these principles. So anybody that wants to get funding from these large funding agencies will have to meet these principles, and that is a big change for some of them. And of course, this push for openness is what's happening with science journals as well, but this should really move, we hope, move the science community forward. The activities beyond the principles, which I'm going to talk about now, fit together through, there's an overall government governing committee, which is representatives of the members of the Belmont Forum, or most of the members of the Belmont Forum. There's a science advisory board, which is morphed from the steering committee at the that we had in the last phase, to make sure that we're doing things properly and to engage well with these outside bodies like ICSU and others. There's then a coordination office with a set of champions for each of the champions for each of the existing data, these different areas, and I'll talk through these. So there are these 4 action themes through a communication, collaboration, coordination office, and there are a lot of existing activities, we know that, and that's one of the reasons for having the set of champions, so they can make sure that we don't reinvent things, but that we can coordinate with existing activities, and also fund some of these activities well, because there are quite a lot of activities that have been set up for doing coordination which are actually rather underfunded at the moment. So the first theme is having a coordination office to do this, so that the office has key figures and there are several countries involved with this office, to map best practice, map the organizations that are involved with this, both that are funded by these large funders and other organizations that like RDA, that have interests in this. Establish a strategic coordination network. And, I mean, this is not going to do all the work, but it will be able to help fund the work that all these other bodies are doing. But it's very important that we don't try and reinvent what other people are doing out of this, and this is going to be something that we move along, we will develop it more. The data planning theme is to have, for each of the agencies, we'll have an enhanced data template for all their investigators to align budget allocations between the agencies as well, to make sure they all put money in for the investigators so they can actually make all their data open, and establishing metrics with regular review of those to monitor how well these funders, the people being funded, are actually doing. There'll be a champion. Several of the countries already have champions, so it may well be one of those to support these activities. And there will also be a security advisory board, because one of the things that we need is to make sure that data are not being hacked by people that don't like the data. And so we need a security advisory board to make sure that the data are verifiable, and also a data policy advisory board, which is basically a legal board to advise on legal issues such as privacy. There are closely related activities in GEO and RDA on this, so we're not trying to reinvent it, but we do need to have something in common on these, and they will feed into the enhanced data plan. And they're also working closely with CoData, will initiate a gap analysis of what isn't being funded well at the moment globally, and identify key repositories which are certified in some way and trusted to serve as exemplars for the enhanced data plans. And it doesn't mean that each of the agencies has to have separate repositories. The repositories already work together, and this through the World Data Centers and so on. But so it's a matter of making sure that this good practice is promulgated well. The third action is the action on e-infrastructure exemplars to determine best practice on particular projects, and also to see We already have a champion who's from France, the geologist or geophysicist Jean-Pierre Villot, and we're going to have a set of scoping workshops initially to develop an evaluation matrix to identify and see how well they work of interdisciplinary case studies, and see how the case studies actually make use of data in the infrastructure, and then identify critical gaps and barriers, and then define funding calls and priorities for further case studies and exemplars. So it's a way of auditing how well we're doing at the moment, and then putting funding in to improve that, across globally. And then the fourth one is developing the development of cross-disciplinary training curriculum to build capability, because almost every country has identified training as being important, but of course the detailed context of how countries train their scientists are different, but there needs to be some curriculum in common. So, and there are some very good practice already. So the NERC, the UK funder, is the one that's going to fund that particular champion, and will create and maintain a database of Belmont Forum members, but also other training initiatives that, and there are some very good ones around. Organize scoping workshops to design the overall curriculum, and organize short calls for training, and allow people to attend internationally summer courses or things of that sort between countries, so we don't have to have every country setting up summer schools and everything, that sort of thing. So the timetable is we produced our final report last summer, and there was a lot of consultation with stakeholders until the autumn. The meeting of principals in Oslo agreed the principles, two sorts of principles, but they agreed the principles and the actions. The implementation plan for it has been published. This coming year, Qatar, who is a member of the Belmont Forum, is hosting the principles. There's a progress report we have to give for that, and the next stage actions, which include funding calls, will be agreed across the Belmont Forum next October, we expect. And of course there's continuing liaison with Belmont Forum members, and we hope with other community bodies, and I would hope Eye on Earth is certainly one of those. So far, the coordination office has been set up with NSF leading, but several other countries being involved with funding the people to be in the office. It's a virtual office. It's staffed at the Arizona Geological Survey in the US. The post of champion has been advertised for that. The exemplars champion has been appointed by ANR. That action involves JST, which is the Japanese agency, MOST, which is the Taipei, China agency, and ANR, which is the French funding agency. The training champion has been advertised, and that is still open for it. And the somebody has been appointed for doing the data and coordinating from NSF, coordinating the data policies. So and there are other people like NERC involved with that. There'll be the first public meeting to consult on with the next stage of all of this as we implement what's going on at the International Data Week in Denver in September for it. And there is a knowledge hub here, which is, there's the address, which is where all our papers, the advertisements for posts, everything else is publicly available on this site. And all these PowerPoints will be open, will be available through the Eye on Earth, and you can get all the reports and everything else through this Belmont Forum website. I hope that you will you will all want to be participating more in this. For countries or countries with agencies that are not currently participating, either the agencies can agree to participate or people can participate through joining activities in countries that are funded. And we can talk about that more if people are interested, but it's probably slightly different in individual countries as to how that'll work. So I'm happy to answer questions for as long as people would like out of that. So thank you very much.